Hi. So in this session, we'll discuss formulas, but before jumping onto them, we'll discuss some of the basics first, like how to enter a formula. Let's take an example. Suppose I've got six numbers over here, and I want to calculate the sum of these numbers. Now, in order to call or use a function, the first step is to use an equal to operator. This is then followed by the function name. In this case, it's sum, then brackets open, and then I specify the location of these cells which I want to sum, brackets close and enter 73. There is another way by which I can pass on these cells separately. So let's say I've got a number over here and I want to pass all of them separately. I use sum, brackets open. Now because I'm passing all of them separately, I will separate them by a comma. And the last one, brackets close, enter. Now there is another way by which you can call or use a function, and that is through the insert function or fx option. When you click on fx, a prompt like this appears. By default, this option is most recently used, and because I just used sum function, so that is why I can see the sum function on the top. But because sum function is related to maths, I select maths and trigonometry, and then I'll scroll down all the way down to S. I've got some over here. When I click on it, it gives me a brief description also that it adds all the numbers in a range of cells. When I click on OK, a prompt like this appears, and now I will be passing values of all these cells one by one. So these are the cell locations, and I can also pass them by selecting them together. Let's select the last one also. And when I click on OK, it gives me number 82. One thing you may have noticed over here is that this number is showing 82 over here, but in the formula bar, I can see the actual formula that I selected I4, I5, I6. Then I selected I7 to I9 together, and then I selected I11 separately. Over here, if I scroll down to the second formula which we had used, I had selected all of these cells separately. And if I select the first formula which we had used, it shows that I had selected all of them together. So formula bar is pretty useful when you want to see which cells consist of formula or not. Because if I go to I4, it just consists of a value 1. So that is why it's not showing any formula. But over here, it is showing a formula. Now, at times when you're working with formulas, you want to edit a formula, you want to add or delete a parameter. So the best way is you go to the cell which you want to edit. Either you click on F2 or you click on the formula bar. So Excel will then show you which all cells are being considered, and then you can accordingly alter your formula. Now, because we had selected all these cells together, their border has been colored with one color blue. In this case, if I click on F2 or if I enter the edit mode, because we had selected these cells individually, Excel has given them individual colors, has given them separate colors basically. Now, because we had selected three cells together, they've got the same color over here. Just helps in visualizing and editing at times. Now let's move on to another interesting topic, which is called locking the cells. Now supposedly I've got this formula over here 73. Whenever I change the values over here, Excel will automatically update the formula values. So let's say I want to copy this value to somewhere else, supposedly over here, but I want the formula to be also intact so that when I make changes over here, the value also gets updated. But what we can see over here is that when we copied and pasted it somewhere else, the range automatically changed. So initially the range was in column I and our formula was in column J. Now that our formula is in column N, the range has shifted to column M. In order to ensure that this particular formula or column N keeps on getting updated whenever this range changes, one way is that we drag the range back to column I, press enter. Or the other way and the most efficient way is to lock down these values or lock down these cells. So when I'm writing this formula, all I need to do is I need to press an F4. What this does is when a dollar sign appears next to my row number and column name, what it shows is that the cells have been locked. So now if I remove this and if I copy and paste this formula over here, now the value is intact. This is called locking of the cells. Now over here, what we did, we locked the entire cell together. Let's take another example. Suppose I've got some data over here and I want to calculate the sum of these columns. So I want to calculate the sum of this, I want to calculate the sum of this and sum of this. So what I'll do, I'll write sum and then I'll select this. Now the best way is that I just copy and paste them. So as you can see, entering into the edit mode, that Excel changes the ranges automatically. Now what if I want to paste this value over here now? As you can see, the range has changed, right? Over here, we want to lock the row numbers. So the formula should be based on row 4 and 5. So how do we do that? When you are writing the formula, go to the formula bar, enter into the edit mode, press 1 F4. So when dollar starts appearing in front of the row number and the dollar is not appearing in front of the column number, that means you have locked the row number. So now if I copy it over here, I get 3, and if I copy it over here, I get 5, if I get copy, and so on. Now what would have happened if, say, I had done an F4 over here and so that I had a dollar sign in front of I as well? When I would have pasted it over here, it would have worked fine. But when I would have pasted it over here, it would have not given me the correct values because now we have locked the cells rather than just locking the row numbers. So this is something which you will come across as you get more comfortable with Excel, as you use formulas on a daily basis, and whenever you want to copy and paste formulas from one place to another. Let's look at some of the options now. So let's go to File and click on Options, select Formulas. Now the first option which I'll walk you through is Calculation Options. Now what we had initially seen was that when we had changed the value of a particular cell, the value of the cell containing the formula automatically got updated. This is because by default this particular option automatic is checked in. But if I do a manual, then let's do an OK. So now what will happen is right now this particular cell is based on these two cells. Let's say I do a 5 over here. So the number is not updating automatically. So what you can do is you can go to formula toolbar, you in calculations, click on calculate sheet, and then it will update the number. Let's go back to the options again. So by default, this is automatic and that is the way it should be unless and until you really don't want Excel to calculate the formula values automatically whenever the numbers change. So let's leave it to automatic. Another option which I'll discuss over here is formula autocomplete. What happens is whenever you start entering a formula name after the equal to operator, Excel will give you options of the different formulas. So let's see how it works. So supposedly I want to calculate the average of all these numbers, right? So is equal to, as soon as I type A, Excel starts giving me all these different options. Let's continue to keep on typing. VE, I can see average over here using the down arrow button, and now clicking on tab, I select average. Now I can give the range of all these numbers, brackets close, enter. Now that we are in the formula bar, insert function is fx, what we just went through. Clicking on insert function again, these are the different types of functions which are here, or the different types of categories. It's same as what is mentioned over here in the function library. Now, trace precedence. It shows arrows that indicate which cells affect the value of the currently selected cell. So I've got a formula over here. If I select trace precedence, it just selects the entire range and tells us that if we are going to change anything in this range, this value will get updated. I can remove arrows using this. Similarly, I've got trace dependents over here. Let's see what trace dependent will do. Supposedly I click on 5. Trace dependent tells me that this particular value is being used across all these functions. So basically these functions are dependent on this particular value. Removing arrows to trace dependence. This particular cell J4 is being used in only two cells. One is over here and the other one over here. Let's remove arrows again. Show formulas. As you can see, it shows all the formulas which are there in the Excel file. Uncheck that. I will just come back to error checking in a while. Calculation options, as I said, it should be automatic, but if they're not automatic and they are manual, then you can use this particular button, calculate sheet, for updating the formulas in this particular worksheet itself. And you can use calculate now using just F9 or this, or pressing on this particular button to update all the formulas in the entire Excel file. Now, error checking and evaluate formula, they come in handy whenever we are facing issues, whenever we are getting some errors in our formulas. Let's take a simple example. Supposedly I'm dividing 1 by 0. So it gives me an error. When I use error checking, Excel tells me that the formula or function used is being divided by 0 or empty cells. So it gives me an idea what type of an error can there be. When you click on help on this error, an Excel guide opens which gives you a brief idea of what different types of errors are. Uh, when I click on next, it will take me to the second error in an Excel file. So right now there isn't any other error. So let's just close it. Let's use another problem. 1 plus 1 divided by 0. If I click on evaluate formula, right now it is showing me 1 plus 1, and as soon as I click on evaluate, it shows 2. So the first step has worked fine, but the next step would be 2 divided by 0. And as I click on evaluate, it shows me error. So basically implying that there is some error when we are dividing 2 by 0. Now with these basics done, for you to have a better understanding of formulas, practicing them and using them is the only way for you to get comfortable with them. So for this, I've created an Excel file which has around 50 plus functions. And for all these functions, I've given a detailed description of their syntaxes. I've given a description of what these formulas actually do. For each of these formulas, I've given some examples, notes wherever I found applicable. And then I've also given you some exercises to do. What I would strongly recommend you is to go through all of these formulas, do all the exercises, and come back to me with any questions or any queries you have. Or if there is any particular formula which is not being covered by this particular list, then do let me know and I will help you out with that. Thanks.